Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening to episode 230 of the Treaty Talk podcast. Myself, I'm Matt O'Callaghan, the Weekly Observer, and Vale Star. The Munster Championships are back. We had both the hurlers and footballers in action, and we had an awful lot of underage action as well as Camogie. So stay tuned for all that and a special guest as we go through all the action at the weekend. I look forward to another bumper weekend.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomás O'Shea. He deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the left brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Matt, we've a guest waiting patiently in the background, but before we get to Eoin Brennan, what's it like to have the Munster Championship back?
Sure, it's great, Jack. It's great, and I suppose it's great to have 2 points under our belts and 2 points in the circumstances. And I know we'll be dealing with it at length later, but it was a close call, Jack. It was a tight call, but it's always better to be nearly drowned than nearly saved,
Yeah, that's definitely the case. We'll let in Eoin Brennan from Clare. Eoin, I suppose you would probably want to talk about the football to get started after your win over Limerick and a Munster final to get through, but we might start with the hurling. But first and foremost, how are you keeping?
Not so bad, yeah. I was looking forward to the Munster Championship too until Sunday hit, but it seems that Limerick were much better able to roll with the punches than Clare were anyway to start off with. But I suppose there's a lot more twists and turns to come, maybe.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the round robin. Like, we had 2 exceptionally good games the weekend, and we have an awful lot to get through. And obviously, we won't get into it straight away this weekend's game, but a meeting of Limerick and Clare, and that's the way it goes. It's so important now for both teams, probably a bit more for Clare. But opening weekend, Limerick got off to win. It was hard fought, and then you had that thriller below in end. What was your initial thoughts after the Clare and Tipperary game? Because probably would be benchmarked as a huge game going into it, as probably 2 teams that, like, one of them probably won't make it, and unfortunately for ye, it was Tip that got off to the good start.
Yeah, well, look, it was disastrous from a Clare point of view, first and foremost. I mean, I suppose a lot of pressures had been put on the game, from both sides of the divide, really, because Tipperary, and the bad year they had, they didn't win a game in the Munster Championship last year. Clare, after a decent year last year, especially in the Munster Championship, had high hopes, even though the league wasn't fantastic. It was difficult to judge the league, so we put a lot of stock into the championship, and unfortunately, things started to go wrong from a very early stage. And once the goals started going in, we, in fairness, the players recovered, but there's only so many times you can shoot yourself in the foot before you run out of toes. So that's, unfortunately, the goals kept coming in. 5 goals, you just can't concede it in the Munster Championship and still hope to survive, even though we scored 323, which is good enough to win most games. But unfortunately, Tip just that bit slicker and a bit more efficient, obviously, overall. And they've got off to a fantastic start now, have a break for 2 weeks until they play Cork, and Clare obviously into the Lions' den now of trying to face the All-Ireland and Munster champions.
Yeah, and to lose a game in Cusack Park as well, which is such a fortress for ye, it just really didn't go right for you on the day. And as you said, there was just too many times you'd claw back that eventually, the tanks probably ran empty.
Yeah, look, actually, Tipperary are the only team to beat Clare in this round robin series in Cusack Park. They did it in 2019, and that was a week before we went down to Limerick and got our cards there as well. About 18 points, I think, separated Clare and Limerick that day. So we're hoping it won't be a repeat of that for definite from our side. Anyway, but yeah, Tipperary beat them well in 2019. We couldn't have any complaints that day. They were just just a better team on the day. But I think it's infuriating on Sunday that, you know, a lot of that was our own undoing. You know, we were the architects of our own downfall by conceding the goals and the errors that we made. And even though we get back into the game by half time, again, you know, we just on the back foot straight away with another goal, a black card and a penalty, and it was kind of game over at that stage. So if you're beaten by a better team, you know, often you hold your hands up and say, you know, fair play to the opposition. But in this case, you know, when you're kind of contributory to your own downfall, it's hard to take. It's definitely a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah, Matt, were you surprised? I suppose probably surprised by the scoring in the game, but were you surprised by the outcome?
Not 100% surprised, I would say, because we've had this discussion, Jack, as you know, on the podcast before, and I think you looked awry at me a couple of times when I suggested that the three that might go through would be Limerick, Tip, and Cork, and you were wondering about Clare, and I had an element of doubt about Clare for the simple reason, and maybe my thinking was conditioned. Probably too much, I would say, by their performance in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. And I think you'll probably agree with me, Eoin, that was a dark day in there because they'd done so well in the Munster Championship. They had done exceptionally well, and the wheels came off the wagon sort of on that day. And I was just wondering, would there be carryover come the championship? And I know you can't judge it that much, you know, performances in the league, but I thought Clare's performances in the league were patchy at best. And I wasn't 100% surprised, but you know, I thought then, you know, a lot of me was saying, right, there's the Innes factor and the wonderful record that Clare have in Innes, and I was saying, you know, the shortcomings, I suppose, in the league, that it would all come together in the championship, but I had this sense all the time, right since very, very early in the league campaign, that Tipperary were of all counties, were the one that had shown the most improvement and were certainly going in the right direction.
Yeah, and as Eoin said, now they have a nice break, but for Clare, you know, you have to say it is the toughest task on paper is going to the Gaelic Grounds and playing Limerick, and we were there, I suppose it's only about a month and a half ago now, for that league clash, and Clare didn't really show their hand, but they're going to have to produce something this Saturday, probably out of nowhere, because if you lose your first two on, you're really staring down the barrel of the gun.
Yeah, look, and Davy Fitzden will be waiting to completely put us out in the third round. So I mean, you know, we're going from the frying pan into the fire, really. You look, I take Matt's point about Kilkenny, but I wouldn't read too much into that. I just think Clare had given so much in the Munster Championship that they just had nothing left in the tank. The squad was a bit thinner at that stage, and you know, it was a step too far, really. I think I wouldn't put that into the results on Sunday anyway for definite. I think the league was patchy, but I don't know if that was nothing to do with it either, because a lot of leagues were patchy, and I think Tipperary had to go for the league in that sense, in that a new manager, they had to build up confidence as well and going into that. So I think it just came down to those errors. I think it'd be interesting to see how the game would have gone if the wheels hadn't come off in that first couple of goals, at least, because I think it would have been a fantastic contest. Not that it wasn't for a neutral, but just from a Clare perspective, it was best watch between your fingers now at that stage, to best watch that game. But yeah, look, they're going to have to produce it now. They're going to have to do it anyway, I suppose, against Limerick. But if they'd beaten Tip, obviously it was more of a free shot, that, like the Waterford performance against Limerick, that, you know, everyone expects Limerick to win it, for good or for bad. But then, so it's up to the opposition to kind of throw everything at it. Clare did it twice last year, and look, got 2 draws in normal time in both the group game and the Munster final. But unfortunately, didn't beat Limerick on either. So I mean, that was their best. They're going to have to even surpass that. Now I get that Limerick didn't play to their optimum either on Sunday, but I think Clare have a lot more improving, obviously, to do, and it's going to have to take an unbelievable performance to beat Limerick, I think, on Saturday evening.
Yeah, you mentioned those two games last year, the two draws. Is the most difficult thing about Limerick is to just actually get over the line because Clare came as close as anyone have over the 3 year spell, but still at the end of the day they were gone the semi and Limerick completed the 3 in a row.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. I mean, that's the experience of winning what Limerick have won over the past 3 or 4 seasons, and that you're winning leagues, you're winning championships. Clare haven't won anything like that, and those players in particular, outside of a few core players that are still there, going back to 2013 at this stage, we didn't even win Munster finals when we were in them against Cork in 17 and 18. It's a big gap to any significant victory. So I'm not saying the group game in Ennis, I just thought it was a great open contest. Both sides were confident at that stage. They were probably going to get through to the Munster final anyway, regardless of the result. But I think the Munster final itself, Clare threw everything they had at them, and I thought, I thought we did extremely well for most of the game, but still, it didn't rattle Limerick. It didn't knock them off their perch. They weren't behind. There wasn't a puck of a ball between the teams at any stage until that extra time. So it's kind of scary when you throw everything you have and you still don't get over the line. So it's hard to see how they're going to come up with something. But I suppose that if any team has studied Limerick over the last couple of years, it is Clare. They've done a lot of catching up, especially in Brian Lohan's time, since that 2020 game where only a handful of us, I suppose, were actually there to witness it because of COVID in Thurles. But that was an eye-opener for Clare in terms of strength and conditioning, especially how far they had to come. And I think they did a lot of catching up in the 3 years, the intervening period of those 3 years. But now with their backs to the wall, did Clare peak last year, or is there more left in the tank? That's all we're going to find out about on Saturday, I suppose.
Yeah, and I suppose the green jersey will be motivation enough for Clare. But probably didn't see the whole game in Thurles on Sunday, just being in Ennis. But what was your read on Limerick from what you did see?
Look, I was expecting Waterford to come out, with something, under Davy anyway, they always have something a little bit different. They come at you from a completely different angle. And I think John Kiley had said that in the week before, that he was expecting the unexpected, let's say, coming up to that game, because in terms of formations and tactics and stuff like that, Davy is very, very adept at kind of getting you on the blind side. So I think Limerick didn't play to their best, that's for sure. The sending off obviously didn't help along the way, but the fact that, again, they were met with all the blows that you're going to take and still came out a bit like the Ennis game last year where, there was a sending off as well and still survived. I think, there's a lot to be said for that character when it's needed most and you're under the cosh a good bit. I mean, 7 minutes of injury time. We were watching that in Cusack Park at that stage. You're thinking to yourself, Waterford will surely get a chance here, but they just couldn't take the chances. I mean, Austin Gleeson went through there, should have taken a point. There was plenty of time left, opted to go for goal. That's not something that Limerick would do at the other end if they were in a similar position. There's just no panic within Limerick. They just get the job done, and I think it's a fantastic start for Limerick, even though they know they have plenty to improve upon. You can't get much better than that.
Yeah, Matt, we'll talk about the game more in depth in a while, but what was your initial take on the game from Thurles?
Oh, sure. Look, it was certainly Limerick below par. There's no doubt about that. But that in some ways would be disrespectful to Davy Fitzgerald and Waterford, because a lot of it was the way that Waterford set themselves out, and I think they brought a level of intensity and a level of work rate to the game that that Limerick certainly didn't expect. And apart from the first 10 minutes when Limerick were completely on top, they found it hard to match it, and you would wonder as the game went on, would they be able to sustain it? But they did, and you could have had a different result had Waterford been a bit more clinical with the target in sight. The scoring or the wide statistics do not make good reading for Limerick. They had 6 wides, or Waterford had 13. And some of the wides late in the game from Waterford came from players that you're back at your house on to put them over the bar, but they didn't. I suppose a bit of it maybe was from the pressure of the Limerick defence, but I'll tell you, the sweetest sound I had for a long, long time, Jack, was the referee's final whistle last Sunday evening.
Yeah, there was a good roar on Turles when that went out. Oh, and Matt mentioned there the kind of work rate and the intensity, and that's something that was clear that Clare brought last year in those two games, and they'll really need to hit the heights there just to kind of try and rattle Limerick, because to be fair to Limerick, they are so composed in any sort of scenario, as we saw against Clare last year with the red card and against Waterford with the red card again.
Yeah, look, and you know what? It was a strange thing in Cusack Park on Sunday as well, that there wasn't really that physical edge. You'd expect that from Clare and Tipperary. I mean, we've seen it over the years, but I don't think Clare put in a big tackle, a big shoal or anything like that you would suggest. It was very unusual, actually, because with all that was at stake, you'd expect it to be a very, very intense game. It wasn't actually. It was more tactically done. I think the goals obviously messed up that as well, but you think that even out of frustration at some stage you'd hit a shoulder or you'd make a big tackle or something like that, but that wasn't the case, and I think we're going to have to do it. I mean, if you remember the Munster final, I mean, the first 10 minutes there, John Keenan swallowed the whistle, and it was a free for all there. It was really, really manly stuff, and I think Clare had to step up in terms of physicality. I mentioned that over the 3 years, and I think they got to that kind of peak last year, but they're going to have to rediscover it again. We're going to have to play with more fire and brimstone than the tactical stuff, I think. We've tried it a couple of different ways against Limerick. It hasn't worked. Obviously, you're going to have your basic tactics to ensure that you don't get mauled at the same time. But I think we are going to have to play with a lot of heart and a lot of character in order to really get back and get the crowd behind them, the Clare crowd, because there'll be a good Clare crowd there as well. I mean, it's going to be an unbelievable atmosphere, as there always is between Clare and Limerick, no matter what the grade.
Yeah, there is. And I suppose one player that kind of brings that kind of heavy metal hurling, I suppose, for want of a better word, is David Fitzgerald. And you'll have him back. And I'd say we just dropped there for a second. But David Fitzgerald was obviously missing at the weekend. Owen, he's a huge loss for you. You'll have him back, and he'll kind of bring that fight to Limerick.
Yeah, he will. Unfortunately, I suppose there's a couple of other injury doubts as well that we're just not sure about. And I suppose David Reedy, if you remember from the Limerick game, was probably the form player for Clare in the up front anyway in the National League. He missed out through a hamstring injury. Shane O'Morey, who just came back into the panel this year, missed out through a hamstring injury as well as David Fitzgerald's suspension. So if you had the three of those back in, it would add to the pack significantly. Fitzgerald obviously is a big player. He won an All-Star last year, let's not forget as well. So he had a massive year from him and can make a big impact, and is a physical guy and does a lot of running around the centre. Ryan Taylor came off kind of late in the game, so let's hope that Fitzgerald isn't replacing just Ryan Taylor in that either, because Ryan Taylor had a very good second half while he was probably alone and maybe missed a few scores that he could have got 5 or 6 points to his name. So, yeah, look, we have to add to the pack rather than just be replacing players that are injured at the moment. So Fitzgerald is a big addition, but we're going to need more from the established players that we have there as well, the likes of Tony Kelly and Peter Duggan and those in terms of scoring, and even Shane O'Donnell didn't get a score, even though he played quite well in his first game of 2023 last time out.
There was some positive aspects though in the forward line. Aidan McCarthy was a 113 he got. Mark Rogers got his 2 goals that, they're probably newish proposition. We know them for the last few years, but they probably won't have been at this peak against Limerick before. Obviously Limerick will have the likes of Sean Finn and Mike Casey and these boys look after him. But there is some interesting matchups, and Clare will look to make hay with the likes of McCarthy and Rogers.
Yeah, I mean, Ed McCarthy, I think he played 12 or 13 times for Clare before that. He was at centre back. He was everywhere. He only got 113 in all those previous games up to Sunday, and then got 113 in the one game on his first day back. So after 2 years, so that in itself was a great positive for Clare, because he missed the entire last year. Mark Rogers, who's been kind of on the scene for a while, probably known more for UL really and his heroics there, just as much as playing for Clare. That was actually his first championship start on Sunday, and as his first goals as well for Clare. So he was phenomenal at the end of the first half with those 2 goals, but then didn't get a ball in the second half, wasn't given any supply. So they're 2 great additions. Shane Meehan as well off the bench. He's a guy that has played no hurling this year through injury, and is an option there. Probably not to start, but definitely an impact player off the bench as well. So yeah, look, there are a lot of options there. I think in particular we've got no change out of the full back line for Limerick in the last couple of years. You had the year where in 2020 where Tony Kelly came roving all over the place, and I think he got 15 or 16 points, but that wasn't really from the full forward line. I think Peter Duggan was in there last year. He got no change whatsoever there in the full back line, and we found it difficult to get scores, and we're probably going to need goals, let's be honest, to get back into this championship. So it's hard to know how we're going to get much change out of a Limerick full back line. They all look like Noel Connors to me back there anyway. They're big physical men, and it's hard to see how you get past them.
Yeah, it is, Matt. But all the same, Clare did still score 23, and that's with Tony Kelly only got a point. As Owen said, Shane O'Donnell didn't score. Dave Fitz to come back into that line. They are potent up front if they get the opportunities. Now they will be limited, but they'll have to be more efficient than Waterford, definitely.
They will, and the first thing you need to nail is, and I think Owen touched on it there, like the intensity and that was in the Clare Tipperary game. It'll be a totally different thing on Saturday night. You're obviously going to see a different Limerick. They're going to go way past and forensically analyse their performance last Sunday. And, there were glaring deficiencies in the Limerick performance last Sunday, which will be rectified. But Clare will do the same. And whilst they have a potent attack, and I think, and I suppose you'd agree with me, Owen, on this, that heretofore in the last 12 months or in recent times, there was a certain over-dependence on the part of Clare on the scoring prowess of Tony Kelly. Now I think that there's a three-pronged attack with Clare because of the arrival on the scene of Aidan, the re-arrival on the scene of Aidan McCarthy, and I suppose Aidan McCarthy finding his niche. And like in fairness, when he played in defence, he was a very, very good defender as well. And the arrival of Mark Rogers. So that's going to work. But it's at the back, like Owen said, like Clare scored 323, should be good enough to win any match, even in the Munster Championship. But it's the frailties at the back. And I suppose if there's any good thing that will come out of it in that regard from last Sunday, is that Clare have discovered it at this point. They still have 3 games left, and that they will have to take remedial action. The full back line was under serious trouble. The back 4 were under serious trouble, and the statistics don't lie. And we saw where the 5 goals came from. All right, yeah. The first goal was of a fortuitous nature because it was a line ball, I think, from Jason Ford. But after that, the problem was close to the full back line.
Yeah, and they are going to be troubled with Gallan, Casey, and Flanagan firing at the weekend. Finally, for me, on the weekend's game, Matt, you might want to jump in afterwards. But from, Waterford did get very, very close. And, you mentioned the one with Austin Gleeson, he should have thrown it over, and there was a few like that. Is there any major things that Clare can take from Waterford's performance and say, yeah, we'll implement that and hope for the same?
Yeah, they probably will. And you see, the question is, was it enough there on the part of Limerick, or was it the first signs that Limerick the force that they were? And I think that will be really put to the test on Saturday evening, because you must remember, Jack, that Limerick go into the game on Saturday evening defending an unbeaten record dating back to 2019 when they were beaten in the final round by Tipperary. They haven't lost in the Munster Championship since. All right, 2 years were straight knockout. But the only county that really has laid a glove on them of any description has been Clare, because like they drew with them in the last round of the league last year in Ennis. They drew with them in the Munster final in Thurles, and Limerick went on to win in extra time. And if there's anything, Jack, and you'll excuse me for saying it, Owen, if there's anything that focused the minds of Clare hurlers and Clare folk, it's the sight of a Limerick jersey. So
Yeah.
Clare against Tipperary and Clare against Limerick are two totally different beasts.
Yeah. On anything, you thought coming, I suppose, watching the game in Thurles that you thought, yeah, Clare need to, implement that.
Well, just on Matt's point there, we're not going to only have to lay a glove in them. We're probably going to have a horseshoe inside the gloves to really have a knockout blow, because I think Clare would have preferred it if Limerick had kind of mauled Waterford and kind of won quite easily, because then they might have taken us likely with the results in Ennis. Now Limerick know they have to improve, and Matt was wondering, was it a blip? I think we've seen from experience that it probably is. You know what I mean? You're going on that experience and all that. You can't see that it'll be more of a pattern. So they're going to obviously have a bit of introspection over the coming days, and they're going to be coming back with a point to prove. But so are Clare, and we're going to have to do a lot more. So I think Clare will definitely have to look at what Waterford were doing. I think they'll know themselves anyway from playing Limerick previously. I think we got it very wrong tactically in 2020 that we just held our positions and let the Limerick half forward line just roam anywhere they wanted, and they could just pick off points at will. I think if you go with them, that's going to be a mistake as well. So I think you have to have a blend between the two, where sometimes you sit and sometimes you go. And I think probably Clare will be trying to do something similar at the other side. There's a lot of this two-man full forward lines now, and then kind of congesting the middle and trying to make that space inside where guys are going to run and there's going to be a lot of roving players around. I think in terms of performances, yeah, definitely Clare are going to have to cut out any mistakes. It's going to have to be flawless, really. The back, I think, were under pressure, but I think they were exposed a lot of the time against Tipperary. Tipperary got that tactically right, where they just allowed a two-man full forward line, and Clare just only had two defenders back there for 65 metres, and then in the second half, Ronan Maher just sat there. So I don't think Clare will be as naive again, but we're going to have to up the performance nearly like 200 or 300% off going off Sunday anyway. So it's a long shot, but as Matt said, it's a derby at the end of the day, and anything can happen in a derby. So we don't know with sendings off or injuries or anything like that goes along. So look, sure, we'll all be there anyway, and it'll probably be another roller coaster ride, hopefully.
Yeah, look, we're just looking forward to another exciting game between Clare and Limerick. Briefly, to be another game between Clare and Limerick on Tuesday, the minor semi-final. Obviously, Limerick were beaten by Cork last night. Clare were in the semi-final already, but couldn't get to the final. It's a good minor side. Owen, I know they lost to Limerick in the second round, but on the day, I think it was just 2 goals kind of pulled it through. But we've seen a lot of lads in Ard Sculreach, the likes of Mark O'Brien and Michael Collins and Jamie Moylan, a few more. It's a nice squad you have there.
Yeah, look, funny enough, the team that got to the Munster final last year went on to, they only lost it on penalties to Tipperary and went on to the All-Ireland semi-final. It was supposed to be this year's team that was supposed to make the impact, really. I suppose today, particularly after the Limerick game, they hadn't performed to their optimum, that's for sure. They played quite well against Tipperary, but the conditions were tough. And then after that, I think that Cork performance was particularly good for them. I know Cork were missing their best player in the night, but Clare that was their best performance. Even though they had a lot of wides on the night, they still scored 17 points and got through it. So I think there's a bit of confidence brewing there. Obviously, they'll have a point to prove against Limerick. It seems to be a common thread here in this so far, but they have a point to prove against Limerick just because they were beaten by them, and I think that was their most disappointing performance and game so far. So they'll have an edge on that. They obviously have home advantage as well, whereas they played in the Gaelic grounds the last time out. And I think Limerick, will be disappointed how they finished that. I think it was a good game last night. Obviously, a good game of hurling and all that. But I think there's more gears in Limerick as well, and they'll feel that they have the Indian sign over Clare. So I think it'll be a great contest again on Tuesday, and I think it could go either way, really. To face Cork in the final now is going to be tough, but it's about trying to make through there by whatever means. I think home advantage maybe gives Clare an edge on this occasion.
Yeah, another mouth-watering game to look forward to. And finally, before we go briefly, I know you've given us half an hour already, but he did get the upper hand over Limerick on Saturday night in the Gaelic rounds in the Munster football semi-final, and probably long overdue for Clare to be in a Munster final. Only lost in penalties last year and having knocking on the door, and I suppose that win over Cork gave him huge confidence. But only just got over the line against Limerick. There was obviously an awful lot separate teams in Ennis for the final round of the league. But look, Clare got the job done, and you'll be happy to be in a Munster final.
Look, I think in general, a Clare win over Limerick is long overdue at any grade at this stage. We'll take anything. Look, you're right in the football. Look, I don't think Limerick or Clare are good favourites when it comes to football, senior football in particular. I thought we did very well to overcome Cork the first day out, but I think everyone really knew that Limerick that showed in the league and that performance against Clare in the league wasn't going to be anywhere near what they're going to produce in the championship. We saw that last year when they came to Ennis and really rattled Clare, who probably thought, subconsciously anyway, that all they had to do was turn up and beat them. Limerick had a great year last year, are struggling a bit, but I think that was a bit of grit from Limerick that the whole county needed to show that they're not as bad as they had shown in some parts of the league. I think for Clare, they were nervy. It's kind of like a team that hadn't made it to a Munster final, and they haven't under Colm Collins, which is kind of strange for all the achievements that they've done to stay in Division 2 for as long as they did up to this year, and their runs in the qualifiers as well. They've been particularly poor in Munster. So I think it was long overdue for Clare to get there. They just about did it in the end. Limerick almost pulled off another major coup. But I think that little bit of experience that Clare, the extra experience that they have, just about got them over the line. There's a good bit of leadership there that was needed. It would have been disastrous for Clare to lose that. So I think to get to a Munster final, even though they're playing the All-Ireland champions, they were hoping for it in Ennis, but now it's going to be in the Gaelic grounds.
They've once they started dropping out there, they have experience of winning in the Gaelic grounds already, Matt, and I'd say we might have lost on there just with
Kerry.
He's back now.
He's back.
Sorry,
you just dropped there for a second as you were about to... Yeah, just for a second, but it's all right. You said about home comforts in the Gaelic grounds, but you have the win there already. So look, there's probably not much expected of Clare for a Munster final, and obviously. Go on. Yeah,
look, I think it's a free shot against Kerry. I think because the main goal for Clare was to get to that All-Ireland Championship. To be in the Tailteann Cup would have been disastrous for that panel that kind of feel after getting to last year's All-Ireland quarter-final that they should be in that company. So I think it was a major test of character to get to the Munster final and be in the All-Ireland Championship. So it's a free shot against Kerry now. They obviously have no one will expect them to do anything in that game, but we've gone out to contain Kerry before. I think Clare will have to go at them a small bit more, and really, that's where they beat Cork. That's where they eventually got over the line against Limerick, has been that aggressive, kind of ravenous, hunting and packs kind of play. So I think they have to do that against Kerry. But look, it's a really long shot, like.
Yeah, but
Jack, I'd like to remind Owen that Limerick Gaelic grounds is the scene of one of Clare's most famous victories back in 1992.
Yeah.
And can history repeat itself?
What? Yeah. Well, we'll be praying for that. I mean, everyone in Clare says they were at that game. I don't think that's physically possible, but everyone says they were at it in the Gaelic grounds that day. But I look, it was a very memorable occasion, but unfortunately, it was the last time that we won a Munster championship. So it's over 30 years ago. It's long overdue. And look, it'd be major to do it, but let's be realistic. Kerry the All-Ireland champion, so it's going to be. It would take something monumental to get Clare over the line.
Yeah.
Speaking of Clare, there, Jack. You know, you must admire Colm Collins and his Clare football team. And all right, it's the first time in his reign that they've got to a Munster final. But the manner in which they picked themselves up last year after the defeat in the Munster Championship and claimed the scalps of Mayo and Roscommon before eventually going down to Derry. You know, I think that gives you a sense of what Clare are about, and you know where Clare are at now. I suppose Clare, Owen, were unlucky to be relegated. You know,
look, they had a lot of games.
Kildare.
Yeah. They had a lot of games with the game in their hands against Kildare, against Dublin and Croke Park. Would you believe they were a couple of points up with a couple of minutes to go and should have seen that one out. One of those would have kept them up. But look, they are where they are now, and I think it's all about the championship. We won't worry too much about the league. It'll just be about seeing where they can make an impact in the All-Ireland Championship. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I think they're equipped to do so, you know.
Yeah, Limerick and Clare will renew acquaintances in the league next year. Clare got to upper hand this year in the 2 games. But you mentioned there, everyone's saying they were there in 1992. I'd imagine literally everyone will be there this Saturday night in the Gaelic grounds, 7 o'clock throw-in. I'd imagine get there early because, you know, it's going to be a lot of local traffic from around the Gaelic grounds area. But Owen, you've been really good with your time, 35 minutes. I won't ask you for your prediction because I'd imagine we'll be going different there, but promises to be a cracking game. And, you know, the Munster Championship is back. And like this, it's going to be so clear after this weekend, probably. But you could also get the case if Limerick if Clare beat Limerick and Cork beat Tip, you'd have 4 teams on 2 points already. So I'd say that's what you'll be hoping for. But Owen, thanks very much and the best of luck, and we'll see you Saturday night.
Yeah, take it handy on us now, will you?
Thanks for joining us, Owen.
Yeah,
no problem. Anytime.
We'll see how that goes. Thanks very much, Owen. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay,
thank you. Now, that's Eoin Brennan giving us the view from Clare ahead of this Saturday's Munster Senior Hurling Championship second round game in the 2 Gaelic rounds. Went through the game in depth there, Matt. Briefly, just going back to Waterford. I know I asked you your thoughts on it, but the resilience shown by Limerick, I think, is really going under the radar. There's a lot being made of potential red cards and Waterford's inaccuracy, but I don't think there was too many teams that would have managed that game out like Limerick did.
No. That is absolutely to their credit, and how they have evolved and developed as a team over the years, and the sort of mental strength and resilience, and that's what it took. Especially when 𝘰𝘬𝘪𝘰𝘪𝘠 Hegarty was sent off, I think we were only a point up. But I thought that it certainly galvanized Limerick. And, you know, we subsequently went 4 or 5 points up. So, look, overall, Jack, it's a day that we were lucky to get out of it. We got out of it, so we move on. But John Kiley, in his post-match interview, Jack, you probably heard him, tackled about the narrative that was going on about Limerick prior to the game, about they were going to win 4, 5 and 6 All-Irelands in a row, which I won't repeat what he described it as, but it was very apt how he described it. But somebody needs to respond and nail the post-match narrative that's going on. And some of the stuff that I've heard and I've seen written from people who should know an awful lot better, it's time that they come off it. And let's have a bit of balance. Let's have a bit of balance in the commentary, and let's have a bit of balance in the narrative. You'd swear it was monsters against angels last Sunday's game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that's why the resilience was kind of lost. And like looking, I just have the scores here. Stephen Bennett brought it back to within a point. Aaron Gillane got a free then, and then he had his penalty saved, and 𝘰𝘬𝘪𝘰𝘪𝘠 got the red card. But the next 4 scores came from Limerick. I remember Tom Morrissey came up really clutch. There was a miss free in there as well. Barry Natch came up from cornerback, and just real leaders on the team up when needed most. You know, and that bodes well because weren't, but whether it was a mix of, I think Waterford got a lot of soft frees, but Limerick pulled off the gas, and Waterford got back into it, and the crowd got into it, and that's the beauty of the Munster Championship, that it can change like a light switch with the crowd getting involved and things, and it'll refocus Limerick. If anything, you know, it's probably a very good result for Limerick to get a 2-point win against all odds, as opposed to, you know, they beat Waterford handily in the All-Ireland final in 20 and All-Ireland semi-final 21. That they got a really good test that'll prime from Clare, because Clare will bring everything.
Clare are going to bring absolutely everything, and it's going to be a different Clare. And as Eoin was saying there, like that the intensity that you'd normally expect between Tipperary and Clare, it wasn't there at all last Sunday. It was more an open game, and that's why you've got those huge scores. Albeit like the Clare defence, they coughed up the 5 goals, if you like, because like the first goal from Jason Ford, you know, but look, the 2 games last weekend will have very, very little impact on what's going to happen in the Gaelic grounds next Saturday evening. It'll be a totally different dynamic, and you know, you could say it'll be welcome to the Munster Championship next Saturday evening.
Yeah, it promises to be a cracker. I'd imagine we're going to be close to sell out under the lights. Limerick were dominant when they met in the same venue at the same time during the league, but I can't imagine it's going to be anywhere like that. And I mentioned those dangerous forwards that Waterford have, but at the same time, you know, the Limerick forward line clicked when it clicked for those 15 minutes in the first half the other day. You know, they really, really clicked. Grow got a pair in the first half. Tom finished with 2. Peter Casey got 2. Flanagan got a goal in the point. Aaron got 7. I think 2 of those are from play. But one positive from Limerick is really big players, the likes of Keane, Kyle Hayes, were quietish. Barry was quietish. You know, Will and Dara in midfield are quietish. That you know, Limerick know that if everyone isn't firing, they have enough that if someone is going well, that they can nearly pull them through. And the likes of Keane then and Kyle and those boys will be really anxious just to lay down their marker this Saturday.
Absolutely, and you know, the fact that you won with those boys below their best is like money in the bank, Jack. Going forward, critical, of course, critical to Limerick's chances, and also will be whether Declan Hannon can return, whether he can recover in time to take his place against Clare. That will be very, very, very important. And I understand at best it's touch and go.
Yeah, like he didn't appear to limp off or anything like that. But I did hear during the day that there was a chance that he wouldn't be starting. But to be fair, you know, Dan Morrissey went in at 6. Still in all, you do miss the presence of Declan Hannon at 6, just as, you know, he conducts the defence with his speaking and his position, and also he starts so many attacks that he's so crucial to the team.
Absolutely, he's pivotal, Jack. And we've been saying it all the time, you know. And when I saw him heading for the sideline last Sunday, I got serious fit of jitters. I can tell you that now, because I know of his importance of it, and especially in the cauldron of a Munster Championship game against the fired-up Waterford side. And you knew straight away that Davy Fitz was going to adjust his forces, you know, to take account of the fact that Hannon was off the field. But full credit to Dan Morrissey and Mikey Casey, who I thought did excellently again at fullback. They battened down the hatches. It was as simple as that. And like Waterford got clear-cut chances towards the finish, Jack, but I think they were shooting under pressure. And that's perhaps why the wides mounted up. But look, Jack, that's history now. That is history. I'm sure there'll be in-depth analysis done of that this week in the Limerick camp, with a view to ensuring that it'll be a different type of performance that we'll see from Limerick next Saturday evening. You see, the prize for Limerick next Saturday evening is win the hurling match, and you're almost assured of being in the knockout stages of the competition. Because even if Clare and if Waterford are beaten by Cork, if Clare and Waterford were to even finish on 4, you'd be on 4 points, and if they were to finish on 4 points, either or of them, you know, you'd have the head to head on them.
Yeah, it's a huge chance, and you know, Clare got as close as anyone did Limerick last year, so I'm sure John Kyle and them will be happy to not only lay down a marker, but maybe put them in the rear view mirror, because they could be as good as eliminated this weekend. You touched on, you know, inaccuracies there, and I know I said Kyle was quiet, but he showed incredible burst of pace to get back and stop Ozzy Gleeson as he bore down on goal. But the defensive effort overall, I thought, was very good from Limerick. And I thought Sean Finn was back to his phenomenal best. He's like a magnet to the ball wherever it bounced. Obviously, it's coming from his intellect and positioning. But, Barry got a lot of credit during the league for his scoring exploits. But they dovetail so nicely. And there isn't a better defender in the country than Sean Finn.
Oh no! But I've been saying we had this discussion, Jack, in the context of the All Stars last year. There, I mentioned that, and there's no question about it. The best right fullback in the country by a country mile is Sean Finn, and he's proven it again this year. Like, Sean Finn has nothing to prove to anybody. But getting back to Kyle Hayes and Barry Nash maybe not being their usual best, you must hand a bit of credit to Davy Fitzgerald for that, because he ensured that as little ball as possible went down the Waterford right flank. If you notice, an awful lot of the puck outs came down more Dermot Burns' wing, and it ensured that it limited the chances of Kyle Hayes and Barry Nash getting on the ball, because you get Kyle Hayes on the ball, he's going to hurt you.
Yeah, and it was like a man-marking job on the defenders, because I think Colin Dunford was over with Barry a lot. I don't remember him getting the ball at all, but his job was to keep Barry away from it. And Mikey Kiley, who's a brilliant forward, was over on Kyle for a share of it and dragged him down repeatedly at one stage, and Kyle got a yellow. I don't know how that came to fruition. But look, Limerick did what they had to do. They got the job done. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if they bet them by 20 points or 2 points. A win is a win. 2 points on the board. They'll be very happy with it. Just before we go from the game, briefly on the red card, Matt. What was your take on the 2 yellows?
The red card was at the far side from me, and I'm only relying on the footage that I saw on television, which is not very, very clear cut in my opinion. It could be either or, but I ask more questions about the first yellow card.
Yeah, and I think the first came from, there was a lot of frees given in a kind of quick fire space in the first half, and obviously Garrod was, I suppose, protesting someone else's innocent because he didn't give away any of those frees. So obviously he said something, and the ref picked it up as a yellow. I just thought in real time the second yellow was harsh. You're on a yellow, so you're giving the ref a chance to do it. So it was probably foolish in a small way towards that. But I think, Garrod, he's probably 6'5", 16 or 17 stone. He's a powerful man. That if he hits you, you're going to feel it. And it comes back to that. Are we treating these players differently because they're probably physically, superior than other fellas? I don't like the narrative coming out that Limerick are a dirty team because they got a red, because in my eyes it was a softish red, and if someone else had committed those fouls, there wouldn't be a word written about it on Monday morning.
No, and like there was fouls committed on the other side, Jack, incidents on the other side, and there isn't a word about him. And I'm absolutely sick of what I'm listening to since last Sunday. As I said at the outset of my remarks on this particular issue, from people that should know an awful lot better. I think the only one that gave a proper take on it was the former Kilkenny player, Tommy Walsh. And of course,
I think Tommy came from a time.
Of course, yeah, exactly. He was speaking from exact experience of having lived through the situation, living through where Limerick are now.
Yeah, and it's a physical game. Like, it's a really, really physical sport. You're playing with hurling helmets. You're going to get belts. You're going to get bangs. You're going to get bruises. Some stuff now is over the top, and worse than others. But I think this narrative that Limerick are a dirty team, they're just a physically impressive side. There's more scrutiny on them. Tommy Walsh was the man. If you want to listen to someone explain it properly, Tommy Walsh is your man, as you said. But look, at the end of the day, the job was done. Limerick get off the board. For a second on Clare, we spoke about that. I presume you fancy Limerick to make it 2 from 2.
I fancy Limerick, but it's going to be very, very difficult, Jack. It's going to be very, very difficult. Clare's backs up to the wall on this one. And I'm a small bit worried about the additional potency that they have in the attack. The like of Rodgers and McCarthy, and maybe Tony Kelly isn't as much to the fore as he was, would say, last year. But that could all change on Saturday evening.
Yeah,
but I'm going for Limerick, but for a narrow Limerick win.
Yeah, and I think that someone like Sean Finnegan will relish like the opposition of maybe an Aidan McCarthy coming in, or a Mark Rodgers, or even Peter Duggan. I think he loves those kind of battles. Mikey Casey, the likes of Will and Dar Donovan do so much work that they'll help between the wing-back lines. It'll be huge if Declan Hannon is fit. But I just think Limerick have the defensive noons to kind of curb that. And the attackers, when they were on last week, really, really shone. So I would definitely be in the Limerick camp for that game. But, it's not going to be a one-way traffic. It's going to be a difficult game, but certainly one to look forward to. And to the footballers, Matt,
But before you go to the footballers there, Sunday is going to be a very, very interesting game in Cork, because it's for Cork's first appearance in the championship, and it'll be interesting to see how Waterford will set up, and of course, if they bring the same fire and brimstone that they brought to Thurles last Sunday, they will make it difficult for Cork down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. But Cork are in a happy position that a lot of the players that suffered injuries before, during the league campaign, the like of Dara Fitzgibbon and Tim O'Mahony, and these are all fully fit. Mark Coleman is going to miss out. Owen Downey is going to miss out through suspension. But Cork will nearly have the best hand that's available to him, and of course to be a major boost him were Robbie O'Flynn to make it. He got injured against Limerick, so he must be closing in on a return. So it'll be very interesting, and that will give us a better sense of where Waterford are at. Yeah, and we had Tomas McCarthy on here last week, and Tomas, he said out straight, that they were targeting the Cork game. Now, they're going to be without Tadhg de Búrca, but they have the advantage that they will have Austin Gleeson from the start. So one will probably cancel out the other. But it's going to be a very, very interesting game.
Call it.
Were Waterford to lose it, it's nearly curtains in the Munster Championship again.
But who do you think will win?
I think Cork will win.
Yeah, I back Cork and Waterford to come out with Limerick. So for that to happen, I think Waterford need to get points on the board. But I do think Cork will win. I think they'll be keen to kind of lay down a marker like Tipperary did, we'll say. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting weekend, and we'll know more once we've seen everyone play, and we'll have seen three of them play twice. We'll know more about the state of play in the Munster Championship. The state of play in the Munster Football Championship is a Clare and Kerry final, and we touched on it a nice bit with Owen earlier on. But for Limerick, look, I have to take the positives. Their best performance of the year by a long shot, kicked 16 points, most of those from play, had good scoring returns from a lot of fellas, had chances to win it, which will be probably the most difficult aspect to take. They had Brian Donovan had a decent goal chance late on. It was well saved. Cillian Fahey missed the mark that he's so reliable on. He had kicked 2 points already, and probably fatigue set in. But Limerick pushed them all the way. Clare had beaten Cork previously. But, a good game to get Tailteann Cup to look forward to. Suddenly things are really looking up for Limerick football.
Absolutely, because there was an air of despondency, and an air of, let me say, of a couple, in some quarters of "I told you so," in the aftermath of the league. But it's great that has been put to bed, because it was a performance that almost brought off another sensational victory. And it was Limerick it was Limerick back showing the type of spirit and the type of football that brought him into Division 2 in the first place. And I'm convinced, and I have said this here a number of times, Jack, were it not for the scheduling of the football league, and of course that was nobody's fault, having to travel to Derry and play Dublin in the first 2 rounds. That was a real sucker for Limerick. And then to go close to beating Louth in RD and just failing, it was all wrong at the start of the league, and had the fixtures been in a different order, we may have we may be having a different narrative about Limerick's league campaign. But look, all is not lost. Out of the Munster Championship into the Tailteann Cup, maybe it's not a bad thing. You heard Eoin Brennan stressing there the importance for Clare of getting into the Sam Maguire Cup. We all love to be in up at the highest echelon, but look, Limerick can have a decent run in the Tailteann Cup, Jack.
Yeah, I think
make no mistake about it.
I think this year the Tailteann Cup suits them a lot more than last year would have, because they were on the crest of a wave last year. Bit of a blip this year, and that'll give them a chance to play against teams probably close to their own level. Like we had to play Kerry last year, and it was good to see where the barometer is, and they went on and won All Ireland, and Clare will have that now. But for Limerick, I think it's important that they're going to play in teams closer to their own level, get good competitive games, and please God, there can be a lengthy run in the Tailteann Cup. We obviously don't know who they're going to play yet, so we'll have to wait and see. But positive evening's work for Mark Fitz and his team. Could have been a lot better, but certainly couldn't have been much worse. Or it could have been a lot worse if they hadn't performed, but they performed, and that's the key thing. And look, we can look forward.
That is the key, and the change of manager and everything towards at a crucial stage of the season. But it has given Mark Fitzgerald an opportunity to get his feet under the table, as it were, and reassess his forces. Even though he had been in part of the previous management structure, but he able to put his own stamp on it, and by God, it came close. It came close to dislodging Clare out of the Munster Championship.
Yeah, so the best luck to Mark and his side. The 5 weeks away, it certainly helped the preparation. They'll have a few more now, so they can get their ducks more in a row, and they'll be ready to go for the Tailteann Cup. The minor footballers, Matt, will have a big chance to reach that Phase 1 final this Thursday. They play Waterford in McNeville Park. If they win and Tipperary avoid a loss to Clare, they'll be in the final against Tipperary and repeated last year. If Clare win, it comes down to scoring, and that could be difficult for them to overhaul as it currently stands. Clare plus 10.
Clare are plus 10 and Limerick are -4. So it'll come down to what your winning margin will be against Waterford if you beat Waterford. Yeah, now I know Tipperary had a huge win over Waterford the last day out.
Yeah, but look, for Limerick, it'll be about getting the win. They weren't given much hope going down to Milltown Malbay last Thursday. Got the job done, scored a share of goals. Got the goals at a good time, and when they actually got ahead, they really powered ahead and were thoroughly deserving of it. And John Ryan will be hoping for more of the same, because it was disappointing opening against Tipperary, to say the least, but they have a real chance now to fully rectify the campaign, beat Waterford, and what happens, between Clare and Tip is out of their own control. But a really, could be a really positive week for the minors as well if they can get the win. If things elsewhere don't go their way, that's fine.
Absolutely,
to beat Waterford in any Munster Championship.
Yeah, absolutely, and if you contrast them, if you can, and this is not a Waterford bashing exercise now. If you contrast our underage performances in the championship, under 21 hurling to date, we have 1 win and a draw. Waterford have 3 defeats. Minor hurling, we've had 3 wins. Waterford have 4 defeats. Minor football, we have 1 win. Waterford have 2 defeats. and in under 21 football we had 1 win and Waterford had none. So like we were in such a much better place than Waterford. So it will depend on what Waterford bring to McNeville Park. I'm only saying that as a background, as to we wonder what Waterford will bring to McNeville Park on Thursday night. But I think John Ryan will be rightfully pretty confident. But were Clare to win in Thurles, it would upscuttle everything. Unless they win by a terrible small margin, and were Limerick to win by 18 or 20 points or something like that, which, over 60 minutes in a football match is, it's very, very hard to imagine. Waterford are technically, Waterford are not.
It's about them getting the win.
Waterford are technically out of the championship, believe it or not. If they win by 23 points and Tipperary beat Clare, they're in.
23. They're currently on minus 34.
Yeah.
So they'd have to win. There'd have to be a 44 points.
So sorry, 44 points.
Them beating Limerick. Yeah, between them and Tip. But look, stranger things have happened. But I think for John Ryan and his side, it'll be all about following up that momentous win against Clare, getting another win, and then you can turn your attention to Clare and Tip and see how that went. But the best of luck to John Ryan and his team. They've got their win now. They've a bit of momentum. Let's hope they can continue that and set up a game against Tip where they'll feel they kind of let themselves down.
Yeah, John has done a very good job. Like he shuffled the pack. He shuffled the pack very satisfactorily from the Tipperary to the Clare game. And you must remember that in the 2 games to date, and again on Thursday evening, he's going to be without his key figure, his captain Aidan O'Shea. But I understand that were Limerick to get to the final of phase 1 of the competition, that Aidan O'Shea would stand a very good chance of being back.
Yeah, he's huge loss, not only as a player, but as the team captain. So for Aidan to be back, it would be positive. But again, we won't look past Thursday evening and that game against Waterford, 7:00, McNeville Park, live on Munster GA TV. Just a couple of more underage games to get through, Matt, before we finish up. Minor hurlers were out last night. They lost by a couple of points to Cork. That puts them into a Munster semi-final. We spoke to Eoin about that. Game itself, it was very nip and tuck. 2 sides with a lot of quality. Cork just kind of pulled away towards the end. Not the most harmful result for Evan Loftus and his men. Probably would have rather go straight through to Munster final. But as I was saying to you off air, probably no harm just to pick up a defeat and see how they react to that. They knew they were through regardless beforehand. So it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is like from the minors.
Absolutely, but you said one very important word there. It was a game of quality last night. You must remember that these lads are only 16 and 17 years of age, but I thought it was a very, very high quality game, and you would be excused for thinking. And I'll tell you, Jack, you talk about physicality. A lot of these lads have fair physicality. Like Cork had 4 or 5 huge players. But the quality of the game was very, very, very good, Jack. The intensity of the game was very, very good. It was a hugely exciting game, and it was nip and tuck, and now you'd have to be frank about it. That Cork in the second half, Jack, had slightly the better hand, the upper hand, slightly only. But it was enough to see him through, and they finished strongly, and that was it.
Yeah, look, it was a defeat at the end of the day, but all's not lost for the minors. They'll have Clare on Tuesday. Look forward to that game. As we talk here, hasn't been fixed, but it will. Clare will most certainly have home advantage. 20s in action match below in Semple Stadium. A loss to Tipperary was very disappointing first half. 1-8 to 2 points. I'm not sure if you've ever seen a Limerick side, Matt, finish a half with just 2 points. They kind of came back in the second half and rescued it somewhat, but damage was done in that first half. And again, it would allow Diarmuid Mullins and the side a chance for reaction, but their place isn't half as safe as the Miners was. They need to be Tip or face elimination.
Yeah, look, the best that they can hope for this year at this point, Jack, is that if we're assuming that Tipperary will beat Waterford in their final round, which will put them on to 5 points, and Limerick would also get to 5 points if they beat Cork. And in such circumstances, the head-to-head would come into play, and it would mean that Limerick would have to go back to Thurles for the semi-final. But look, that's jumping a step ahead, and I wouldn't be too worried about going back to Thurles to play Tipperary again, particularly after the first half when we 13 wides and only scored 2 points. But the first things first, and a very, very, very big challenge with Cork on Friday night. And Jack, it's going to take a super effort on the part of Limerick if they are to rescue their season at this stage, because Cork are going so well. They've got 3 wins under their belts, and they have a couple of seniors on board, a couple of the senior panel on board, and Eoin Downey, who might have conflicting interests this weekend between the under-20s and seniors. He's suspended from the seniors, so he will be available for the under-20s. So I think it's going to take a special performance, and it's going to take definitely their best performance of the current campaign from Limerick if they are to survive in the championship. And there's no sugarcoating of it, Jack.
Yeah.
And of course, you see, they were
they certainly have the talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were hit by the injury to Adam English just before half time against Tipperary, and it's they came so close at the finish. They had it down to a point, and could have got a draw out of it, could have sneaked a win out of it. But what we need to see, Jack, is we need to see the second half performance for 60-odd minutes. Anything less against Cork, and it's curtains.
Yeah.
And as you said,
for a team that's
it's a team
so
littered with
talented and players we've seen in the senior championship, and it just be. But it might be the sort of result, Matt, that will I suppose focus the minds again, because they're coming up against probably you would imagine the best team in the championship on paper is Cork now. Without Limerick will have something to say about that. But look, they just need to find a 60-minute, 65-minute performance, and if they do, I would back them. A draw will be good enough for them as well. A draw would be a draw isn't good enough looking at the table, because they have to win.
No, assuming that Tipperary will finish the job and beat Waterford, they'll move to 5 points, which means that a draw won't be good enough for us.
Well, that's the scenario for Limerick, and you'll point to the late point conceded against Clare, and obviously the slow start against Tipperary. But on their day, when they get going, I still think they're the best team in Munster. So please God, they can regather the troops.
We saw that in the second half on last Friday night. In the first half, it would be nearer to being the worst team in Munster. But having said that, they had an awful lot of. Well, you have to have an awful lot of possession if you're to create 15 chances in 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was just inaccuracy. It was just
inaccuracy. Just look. I'll tell you. It was. Look, I just couldn't believe what we were watching, Jack. Just couldn't believe it.
one of those days you just have to
One of
park
those
it
days.
and move on. But they're playing Cork this Friday night in the Gaelic grounds at 7:30. So hopefully they can bounce back and get the win there. An hour and 10 on the clock, Matt. We'll finish with the minor Camogie side. What a huge victory for them over the weekend. They beat Clare in the minor A Shield semi-final. They have an All-Ireland final to look forward to. What a win for Limerick Camogie. You know, it's we had spoken about the 16s winning Munster, and now you've that to come as well. It's just another positive step for Limerick Camogie.
Yeah, Jack, I don't know why they call it a shield, because a shield, it tends to be invariably for clubs or counties that were beaten in the first or earlier rounds, but that is not the case in this. This is the second tier of the minor championship. You have the top 6 and you have the next 6 who play in the minor A Shield. So it's a fantastic performance by Limerick to get to the final. Now, it was the second week in a row, the second time in 6 days that they played Clare. And it'll give you an idea of how evenly matched Limerick and Clare were. The previous Sunday in Kilmallock, they played out a draw, Limerick coming from 8 points down to force a draw. And on this occasion, there was only 2 points in it. But Limerick were more convincing winners, Jack, than the 2 points would suggest, in that they were winning by 5 points 2 minutes into injury time when Clare got a goal. And there was about 5 minutes of injury time left, so in total. But we were condemned to a few, uneasy minutes there towards the end. But Limerick saw it out. Now they face an Antrim team that are very, very strong, and that has been fixed for Nolan Park on Sunday week at 2:30. And Antrim have already beaten them in the group stage of the competition. So it's not such a bad place to be. Limerick won't lack motivation going into that game, but it's going to be tough. But any All-Ireland final, Jack, there's no All-Ireland final a gimme. You've got first of all you've got to go out and earn the right to get there, and then you've got to earn the right to win it. But I think Limerick are well placed, Jack. Yeah, but it's going to be difficult. But don't for 1 minute underestimate the achievement of Paul Dunn, Tony Dunn, and their girls. They've been absolutely fantastic. I've seen them 3 or 4 times during the campaign, and I was in Clonmel last Saturday for the game, and looking forward to an All-Ireland final. It's like with a couple of dark days early in for Limerick Camogie early this year, and a few disappointing results in the league. But look, it's beginning to come together. With the seniors had a very, very good result against Offaly to rescue their season, to rescue their league status, as did the juniors. And then we had that fantastic under-16A Munster Championship victory, and now we have an All-Ireland final appearance for the minors. So happy days, Jack.
Happy days is right for Limerick Camogie.
Also, Jack, also this weekend, the curtain raiser to the Limerick Clare game is the Munster Senior Camogie semi-final between Limerick and Clare. So Limerick have an opportunity, if they beat Clare, to get to the Munster final. It'll be the first time since 2021 that Limerick will have reached the final. So the other side sees Cork playing Waterford, with the winners playing Tipperary. But we're in with the big boys. If we get over Clare, we'll get a shot at one of the big boys, because Waterford are one of the emerging forces of Camogie at the moment, and get to a provincial final and let the provincial final take care of itself. It's not too long ago since we won our only provincial final, I think in 2017, when we surprised and beat Cork in the final.
Yeah, the best luck to John Lillis on the side. On Sunday also, Dave Deedy's junior Camogie side, there's a share of them taking part in the Great Limerick Run. So that's to raise funds for their training. So there's a link on our website. There's an article about it with a link to the I Donate page. There's a link on the Camogie Twitter and Facebook. So if you have a few spare bit of money to donate to them, they're doing great work there. So they're taking part in the Great Limerick Run, and I suppose best of luck to everyone that's taking part in the run. I think it's Riverfest weekend. There's obviously that huge Limerick versus Clare Munster Senior Hurling Championship game that'll probably take top billing for most people, but it's going to be a busy weekend. Hopefully the weather will be good, and hopefully the Senior Camogie and Senior Hurlers can get the wins on Saturday night, and please God, Thursday and Friday will provide Limerick wins as well. It's so busy these times. The minors are out, minor footballers out Thursday, 20s out Friday, Senior Camogie and Senior Hurling on Saturday. And we'll have a bit of a break then for the weekend, I think, leading into the bank holiday. But an hour and 15 there, Matt.
I would just like to add to what you said there about David Eady's fundraiser in connection with the Great Limerick Run. David and his group are doing fantastic work with the Limerick Junior Camogie team, and I saw him playing against Offaly, and I was impressed, and I was wondering why they were in the position that they were in, but they will be much, much stronger for the championship. And they have a very interesting championship coming up against Armagh, Sligo and Offaly. And the squad will be considerably strengthened when the minor championship is over, because there are some very, very good players on the minor team, naturally, that have reached an All-Ireland final. But the link is Limerick Camogie Training Fund, Great Limerick Run Fundraiser. Limerick Camogie Training Fund, Great Limerick Run Fundraiser. And like you, I would appeal to anybody that has a few quid to spare. Give it to Davy and the girls. They're doing fantastic work for at their level for Camogie in the county.
No, well said. I think it's fitting to leave that there. As I said, another huge weekend for Limerick. Big thanks to Eoin Brennan there, giving us the Clare take and giving us so much of his time as we look forward to that big Munster Championship game. Obviously, a share of Camogie and minor and under 20 hurling to look forward to as well. Big thanks to Noel's Menswear for their continued sponsorship, and the winner of that voucher will be announced later on the website for those who entered after the Munster Championship win over Waterford, and there should be another voucher to give out following the Clare game. So thank you to Noel's for that. Thank you to you, Matt, as always, for your contributions and your knowledge and insight into all things Limerick GA. And look, we got a win to start off the Munster Hurling Championship. Footballers just fell short, but if the Hurlers can get another win this weekend, it'll go some way towards consolation for that. We have a Tailteann Cup to look forward to, but I think all roads are leading to the Gaelic Grounds this Saturday evening for a meeting with our noisy neighbours, Clare, and please God, Limerick can gain the upper hand once again. But for us, that's over and out for Treaty Talk episode 230. Thank you very much.
Especially when we get old with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Seanie Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Sheahy, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the run, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there